There goes 82-0. Fred Katz here on ClipperBlog Live, following the Clippers' 98-92 loss to the Kings. First loss of the season brings the Clippers to 2-1 on the year. And boy, they haven't looked good in one game yet. It's not just me here on CBL. Over at Staples Center is ClipperBlog's own Jovan Buha.
What's up, guys?
Not guys, just
Viewers.
oh, yeah. All the viewers.
Guys and gals.
How quickly we forget about the viewers. I think this is the most clean-shaven CBL I've ever done. I'm almost never clean-shaven.
Me too. Me too.
It's a hairless CBL. Myers Leonard would be proud. Let's talk about this game, because that was not very much to be proud of. The Clippers fell by 6 to Sacramento. They looked generally bad all game on both sides of the floor. DeMarcus Cousins destroyed them, 34 points, 17 boards, 5 assists, I think. His defense looks so much better in the first few games of the year than it's ever looked in his entire career. He looks like he's making his way potentially a top 10 player territory. And once again, it's the same issues plaguing the Clippers over and over again. It's defensive rebounding, where the Kings got about 40% of their misses on offense on the boards. It's wing defense, and it's a different kind of offense than we've seen before, where they're just missing their shots, right?
Yeah, I think that's the troubling thing I'm taking from all of this, is just that, preseason happened and we were like, okay, the Clippers' issues of rebounding and wing defense isn't something new. We knew this coming in, but it's preseason and whatever. But it has persisted into the regular season, and I think they are legitimate concerns because, there's no other way to boil it down. Like, the Clippers have played, if you include the Thunder without Durant and Westbrook, they've played 3 teams that should finish under 500. I think if the Thunder didn't have Westbrook and Durant, even though they just beat the Nuggets, that's a sub 500 team in my opinion. And they almost lost it. They could be 0-3 right now. They're very close to being 0-3. They're a couple of minutes away in their first 2 games from being 0-3, and I think that's really disconcerting because, including the 8 preseason games, we really have 11 games of small sample size, but still, the Clippers have yet to really play more than 10 good minutes in a row this entire season, and I think that's what's really disconcerting is, we know this team's a contender, we know they're really good, we know they should finish with the top 3 seed in the West most likely, but these are the type of losses that could really come back and haunt you, in April, because you should not be losing to the Kings at home. I know they're improved, they look better, but this is not a game the Clippers should have lost, and can't really afford to lose with how close the West is going to be.
And we know about the wing defense and how that's been a struggle for them, and that was an anticipated struggle. Same thing with the rebounding. The shooting is something where you can say, teams go into slumps, Redick goes into slumps, whomever else. It happens over 3 games. If Redick were shooting like this over a 3-game stretch in the middle of January, maybe some people would notice, but no one would really care or find it anything to worry about, and you should probably take that same mentality early in the season. However, the actual offensive construction has been different, and it's not just because they're missing shots. We see them giving the ball to Blake Griffin a lot more, and Blake either isoing, Blake concentrating on his jumper. Blake took 13 shots in the first quarter today, and a lot of them were just mid-range heavy shots, just long 2s. And yeah, Blake's shot looks a lot better, although it didn't look very good today, finishing 6 for 20. But the offense is running differently when they're more mid-range dependent. They're more isolation with Blake dependent, and it seems like we're not seeing as much pick and roll. Is this a Alvin Gentry not being their issue? Is this something you think we're going to see? Is this just them relearning how to play together early in the season? Because the offense looks weird to me.
Yeah, it does look weird, and I don't know. I've thought about the Alvin Gentry thing, and I'm kind of torn on it because it's like he did install. You could tell the offense was a lot better last season, and just from the stuff they run and how much pick and roll they did. But I think it's not like they just unlearned that stuff. Even though he's not there, and maybe they're missing him. I still think Doc and maybe some of the player development guys, and obviously the players, they all saw what Alvin Gentry was doing, and was drawing up for them. So I feel like Doc, Doc's a competent coach. I think he can remember what Alvin Gentry taught him and could reinstall a lot of the same stuff. But I do think this is one of those scenarios where it's kind of like almost having too many tools in the toolkit kind of can hurt you with Blake. And he did work on shooting a lot. It looks a lot better as we saw in preseason and even this season so far. He's hit. He's been hitting threes. He's been hitting 18, 20 footers with consistency. But I do think he has been settling a bit, and it seems like anytime he has the ball and there's no lane and you see defenses loading the paint, he's like, okay, well, let me take this 12-footer, let me take this 14-footer that he used to not take. Before it'd be he bulldozed his way to the rim and tried getting a foul. Maybe he'd get an offensive foul turnover, or he'd just kick the ball back out to Chris and reset the offense. But now he has that confidence that, I can make this 12-footer, I can make this 14-footer, let me take it. And I think, when he's hitting them, it looks great. But tonight, I believe he was 0 for 8 from 10 feet and beyond, and that's when it gets ugly.
It's funny the way the pendulum swings in that early in his career. The criticism on Blake was all he does is dunk. He's not able to do anything from the outside, and all he does is just score on the inside. That wasn't necessarily the criticism from this crew because we figured he's young and he's going to develop a jumper. And on top of that, what's better than the most efficient shot in the game and being really good at getting the most efficient shot in the game, which is just a dunk or a layup. But now it's almost swung to the other side where it's kind of he should be going inside more. The post-ups are not necessarily – one of the reasons Blake is a really good post-up player is he doesn't have very good footwork inside. He'll jump and spin in the air as opposed to positioning himself with his shoulders as a good shot. When he does his hook shot, he'll go baseline because he's afraid to go, and then go up with his right hand when he's on the right block because he's afraid to go up with his left. His footwork is not great, but the reason he's a really effective post-up player is because he's really good off the ball at pushing guys all the way back to 2 feet away from the basket and getting 2 feet in the paint. He's not really doing that this year. He's kind of content setting up at 9 to 12 feet. It's impossible to read his mind. It could be because he's more confident in his jumper. But we're seeing the post-ups from 9 to 12 feet now as opposed to with 2 feet in the paint. And that could be a reason for, a 6 for 20 shooting night as well. It's just kind of different offensive construction. The only time we saw the Clippers offense look really good today was that stretch at the beginning of the third quarter when they went 5 or 6 straight possessions to Chris Paul on that short pick and roll. It was either short pick and roll or Chris Paul ISO on the left side. From 14 feet, and it looked good then.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I forgot who tweeted this, so I'm sorry if you see this, and I'm not trying to take any credit for this idea, but basically like the downgrade from Alvin Gentry to Mike Woodson offensively. I will say there's been some Knicks-ish stuff to the Clippers offense where you're just seeing. I think like pick and roll into ISO for Chris is fine, but like there has been a lot of ISOing, mainly with Blake, but like at times with Chris, and it just seems like they're like, oh, here's the ball, let's clear out, and that can work because those guys are just so talented and so good at scoring. But I really think that like that out of bounds play that they had that got the DJ reverse lob, like that was just an amazing play that like we didn't see much of that, and I know Doc's amazing at drawing out of bounds plays, but like that was like basically two pick and rolls in one, and that led to a wide open dunk for DJ. And I think they gotta incorporate more pick and rolls. Like Chris Paul, Blake Griffin pick and rolls are almost impossible to defend, and I think they need more of that in the offense.
Yeah, that tic-tac-toe pick and roll is so effective when Blake rolls, gets the ball, and throws the lob to DeAndre. Like, it seems impossible to stop. Let's talk about something that was actually good today. The bench looks a lot better. The bench has struggled a little bit. They looked a lot better, especially in the second quarter when Turkoglu gave some really good minutes. Farmar gave some really good minutes. It seems like Jared Cunningham has passed Reggie Bullock on the pecking order. I know, Jovan, you're making fun of me for that because you're saying it happened in preseason. But who knows if it happened in preseason because Cunningham was on a non-guaranteed deal. Ingles was on a non-guaranteed deal. So, we don't really know if he's just playing to play. But apparently he's past Bullock in the rotation because Jamal Crawford was out today and Cunningham got the minutes. How many minutes did he play?
11.
Yeah, he played 11 minutes today, and Bullock didn't get off the bench for the third straight regular season game. So, what did you think of the way the bench unit did?
I thought the bench looked a lot better, and this kind of harkens back to the gift and the curse of Jamal Crawford. I think this is now his third season as kind of the leader of the second unit, and I think at times they can be too dependent on him, and I think especially with such a new bench where you have like CDR, Farmar, and Haas all as new guys, they're probably still uncomfortable running the offense and kind of just fitting in and getting acclimated. So I think the first two games you saw a lot of just like give the ball to Jamal and let him try and create, which works when his shot's on, but as we know, he's a very hot and cold shooter. So he was hot Friday, but he wasn't that hot on Thursday. So I think today you saw a lot better ball movement and spacing and just passing. Like Spencer Hawes and Hedo Turkoglu are so skilled. There's so many good passing big men, but I would say for like second unit guys, like they have to be up there for. They're not as good as like Boris Diaw per se, but like I think those are very good passing big men for bench guys at least. And I just think the bench looked a lot more comfortable, and you saw better shots, you saw 3-point looks, you saw dribble drives and kickouts, and it just looked a lot better. And I mean, like Doc said after the game, like the bench was what got them the lead in the first half, and that's what kept them competitive. Like the Kings starters, after a quick start, hitting 3 threes, the Clipper starters looked really bad and they couldn't score. Excuse me, there's a basketball game going on that looks better than the Clippers played today. But yeah, so I thought the second unit looked really good.
Today is kind of the first time we saw what Hawes can do offensively too.
Yeah.
When he plays with a starter, when DeAndre was on the bench with some foul trouble and Hawes came in and he was stretching the floor and he complements Blake really nicely. That's not even a thing. A buzzer going off that many times in a row is not a thing. What is possibly going on in that game right now where a buzzer would need to go off 7 times in a row? That's not a thing that happens in a basketball game. Why would they need to do that? Scoreboard operator has so many substitutions every single time, keeps forgetting about it.
I'm gonna mute myself.
That is not something that happens. Now I totally lost my train of thought. Hawes. He totally changes it up with Blake because he's a really good passer. He's a good screen setter. He can pop. He can roll. He can hit threes. It's a totally different dynamic than when DeAndre's out there. And DeAndre doesn't give you nothing offensively because DeAndre's a good pick and roll center. He's a Tyson Chandler mold type center, or a Bogut mold. Not Bogut mold because Bogut's too good of a passer, but he's more of a Chandler type center. And Hawes just totally changed. He doesn't give you what DeAndre gives you defensively, but offensively, I mean, he's a really nice compliment with Blake out there. And now
yeah, the mute button wasn't working. I think Hawes today, like you said, was the first day we saw what he can do, and I thought his 3-point shot looked a little short the last couple games, but today, he only hit 1, but he was 5 for 10 from the field, and I think the thing that I really like about him is just his passing, and he's just very skilled, and I mean he's kind of. I also forgot who tweeted this, but he's. It might have been Bob Vulgaris. I think I could be wrong, but he was basically saying Hawes is what Charles Barkley thought Byron Mullins was, and I think this is like what we kind of envisioned from Mullins. I don't think we thought he'd be necessarily a good passer and was very skilled, but like that stretch big who, is somewhat of a defensive liability, but can sort of hold his own on the boards and, is blah defensively. And Haas, I think, is a nice piece, and it's kind of reassuring that they do have that guy that if DJ is in foul trouble, which he has been the last couple of games, they can feel comfortable playing him, in the fourth quarter and late in games. And, he can actually do things that DJ doesn't do, and he can give them a new look and let Blake operate inside with better spacing. So I think that's been important.
You know, I actually thought Hawes was okay containing the pick and roll tonight. I know it's not his strength usually, but I thought today specifically he did an okay job. Defensively. The Clippers defense though still wasn't very good. Let's take a first question. This one's just from the comments section from a guest commenter. Does the Matt Barnes DeAndre Jordan offensive combo put too much pressure on the other three guys they share the floor with to score? And the Clippers basically playing 3 or 3.5 on 5. Those guys on the floor.
Yeah, I might say yeah. I mean, I think unless DeAndre is around the rim or rolling to the rim, which, like we just mentioned earlier, they haven't been running as many pick and rolls. And I almost think, in a way, obviously Chris Paul, Blake Griffin pick and rolls are probably the Clippers' best play just because, those guys are legitimate scoring threats. But I almost think DeAndre, Chris Paul pick and rolls might even be more dangerous in a way because Blake's man can't leave Blake, because now Blake can obviously score inside. He can finish lobs. He can just catch the ball and finish and get an and one or something like that. But he can also shoot now. So I think I'd like to see more pick and rolls with DJ involved. But that being said, obviously Matt Barnes, he's looked better this season, but the preseason shooting woes have kind of continued. He had a couple, 2 or 3 layups today that he point blank he just missed that were semi-contested, but still he should be making those. Seems like his shot's been short. So I think at this point we've all realized the Clippers need to make a move to get a starting caliber small forward and probably move Matt Barnes to the bench. At the very least, get a quality backup 3, I think. I like CDR, but he has been struggling with the shot too and kind of has played timid in my opinion. The Clippers need another wing. I don't know how they're going to get that, but they need someone that has size and length and some athleticism. Otherwise, I think you're going to see when they're playing the Thunder or the Spurs, not really the Warriors, but there are teams in the Houston, there are teams in the West that have really good scoring wings, and in the wrong matchup that can really hurt the Clippers.
Let's take another one from Brandon Tomyoy on ClipperBlog Live. Brandon Tomyoy, friend of the show, I gotta say. You gotta throw in friend of the show whenever you possibly can. Has the rebounding disparity been magnified from the missed shots? Doc's team never focused on offensive rebounding.
That's a good question because I think actually the Clippers have done a good job of offensive rebounding. The missed shots, they've been shooting terribly, so I will say that inflates it. But I think the infuriating thing is that you do see, let me look at the box score quickly, but I think you do see, so DeMarcus Cousins had 6 offensive rebounds, Derek Collison had 1. I mean, I think you just see a lot of times opposing guards or wings will get offensive rebounds, and that's because the Clippers' wings are either too small, not boxing out, or already leaking out to try and get a bucket in transition. And I think that's a problem. I know DeAndre's traditionally struggled with DeMarcus, so I'm not gonna act surprised that DeMarcus had a big game. He always kills the Clippers. It's not a new thing, but I do think the rebounding is an issue. They were a bad rebounding team last year, and it's kind of continued. And I think that's a big issue right now.
Yeah, I will say if the Clippers are not going to get out and run, which they haven't really been doing, and I don't know if that's a preferred. I mean, they forced turnovers today. I'd have to go back and see how many of them were live ball turnovers versus dead ball turnovers. But Sacramento turned it over 19 times today. The Lakers turned it over a few times. And they were getting times where they had live ball turnovers, and they elected not to push the ball. I don't know if that's a change under a pretty much revamped coaching staff everywhere except for at the top of the coaching staff with Doc. I don't know if that's just a 3-game thing and they're going to start running again more. But they haven't really been getting out in the break. You haven't seen, you've seen a lot of times where they get out and they could have a break and they, Paul pulls up or Blake pulls up or whatever it is. If that's the case, maybe Blake, if they're not going to run as much, maybe Blake shouldn't be leaking out as often as he does. Maybe he should be staying in and trying to get those defensive rebounds because, Brandon mentions the offensive rebound stuff. Offensive rebounding is okay. It's defensive rebounding where they finished 25th or 26th last year. It's defensive rebounding where where they're giving up those 6 offensive boards to Cousins, and where a lot of times they're failing to block out. And it's one of those scenarios where actually I'm going to annoyingly say it has a lot to do with eye test, because there are a lot of times where guys just fail to block out.
I mean that's kind of always been the thing though with Blake and DJ, is that they've always been guys who kind of rely on their athleticism, not necessarily their technique to box out. And I think that's why you've seen like Robin Lopez is a good example of this, which I think we've talked about before. Like, he gives DJ trouble because he's very good at boxing out. He's very good at, you know, finding positioning of where the ball is going to go. And, you know, DJ can out-jump 99%, you know, 95% of the big men, and it has the size and athleticism to just get boards against most big men. But those guys that, like Lopez, is a legit 7 foot, is probably a somewhat similar build to DJ, at least, like, I'd say weight and strength wise. You know, he can hurt him that way, and I think we see that with someone like DeMarcus Cousins, who's probably 280, 285. Like, he's got 20, 30 pounds on DJ, and he's just able to push him around, and it doesn't help that DJ is not necessarily boxing out. And I think, like you said, going back to the fast breaking, I think a lot of the problem has been the Clippers just haven't been getting rebounds to even create fast break opportunities. Like, obviously, like you said, there's been times when they just didn't go out on the break when they had the opportunities, but you know, you can't get those lobs if you're not getting the rebound, and I think that's an issue that they have to address. And the surprising thing to me was I went back and looked at it. In the first 2 years of the Chris Paul era, they were actually a good rebounding team. I think they were top 10 both years. Could be mistaken, but they were above league average. Whereas last year, you know, defensive rebounding, like you said, they were bottom 5. So I don't know if it's something to do with Doc and his technique, or just, you know, guys being gone and the wing position being kind of depleted the last couple of years in terms of rebounding. But yeah, it's an issue that they have to resolve somehow.
All right, before we go, Jovan, I'm going to ask you this: are these actual concerns that we are going to be worrying about with the Clippers in Game 40, or are these just 3 games? They're off to a sluggish start. They'll be fine, because here the Clippers' defense was really bad the first 10, 12, 14 games of the season also. And then those concerns pretty much completely went away as the season progressed, and DeAndre got better, and the cohesion got better, and the communication got better, and everyone just kind of forgot about the first 12 games when they were like 17.
I'm going to say that the rebounding isn't a concern. I think that they're going to address that. They can address that with just technique. Sorry. Hopefully another 7 horns don't go off. I think they can address that by just, you know, changing the way that they box out. I don't know. They can change that schematically, basically. But I think the wing defense is going to be an issue, especially if, knock on wood, even though this is plastic, you know, Matt Barnes misses any games. Like, this team is going to get torched on the wings. And I think the wing defense is going to be an issue unless they find another wing, whether through trade or free agency. Maybe, you know, someone gets bought out of their contract, or, you know, I know there's been Ray Allen rumors, but he's not going to fix the wing D. And I think the 3-point shooting actually is a concern, because lest we forget, like, this team was in the top 10 in 3-point makes, but that's also because they took a lot of threes. Like, in percentages, I think they were 22nd or 23rd in 3-point percentage. So they haven't really added anyone, like Spencer Hawes, yeah. But, you know, they did lose Jared Dudley, who I know Clipper fans have kind of been hard on him, but for the first 30 or so games, Jared Dudley was a good shooter and a good, you know, role player on the Clippers, before he kind of started battling his injuries. So, and they did have Danny Granger last year too. So I don't know. I think the 3-point shooting is a concern. Obviously, I think JJ and Spencer will, and just the rest of the guys should bounce back to an extent. But I wouldn't say that this is like an above-average 3-point shooting team. I think they only have 2 or 3 really good shooters, and that's somewhat of a concern.
All right, well, you heard it first from Jovan. If Jovan says it, then it must be true. That's the rule. Everyone knows that. That's going to do it for us today. Clippers get their first loss of the season, falling 98-92 to the Kings, 2-1 now on the year. We're back with you tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Pacific when the Clippers take on the Jazz. That's also at Staples. For Jovan Buha, I'm Fred Katz. Until tomorrow.